What up, though? The People's Press and Wilmington Advisor, Wilmington, North Carolina, February 19th, 1836. The People's Press newspaper and Wilmington Advertiser, Wilmington, North Carolina, Friday, February 19th, 1836. Ran away from the subscriber on Sunday, the 24th day of January, 1836, a Negro man named Harry. Right away, we'll correct them. He's not a Negro man in 1836, so what is he? More than likely, he's an American Indian. More specifically, he's what his people called him. And he's who his people is. I know when you see runaway or ran away, see? Runaway, ran away. This says ran away. Some of y'all probably think that runaway is synonymous with shackles on the neck, wrists, and ankles. From the subscriber on Sunday, 24th day of January, 1836. In 1836, do you know where your people was? I got an idea where my people was. Take time and find out. A Negro man, or properly an American Indian man named Harry, about 40 years of age, who has a wife at John Walker's plantation. A plantation is a place where planting happens. It's a soil portion. And yes, people work on that soil portion, especially if the crops are plentiful enough to where the owner of the plantation can make money. Who else gon' harvest the crop? You gonna need people to work on it, right? Depending on how big the plantation is, you hire people. And who are called employees, right? Sometimes it's family. We all family. He was dressed in homespun, mixed blue and copperas, somewhat worn, had on a tarpaulin hat, the tar off the top, leaving the straw bare. He has lately been cutting wood at Nathaniel Potter's plantation in Brunswick County and may be in that neighborhood. So he has lately been cutting wood at another plantation. So he was cutting wood at another spot and he was making some more paper at another spot. Okay? And may be in that neighborhood. I will give $10 reward for his delivery to me or in jail, and all reasonable expenses paid. Edward Newton, Federal Point. Now, the one thing we missing is Harry, the American's last name. Okay? And understand this. You fill out an application today at your job. You free to go. You free to quit whenever you want to. They free to fire you whenever they want to. Now, during this time, he had a contract, possibly Harry had a contract with this Edward Newton, or Since we don't know Harry's last name, he could have possibly been related to Edward Newton. We don't know. Don't assume. Don't assume. Now, if Harry is somebody in your family in 1836, then let us know that he's somebody in your family. We're not going to assume here. The Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin by Benjamin Franklin. Here's an illustration. I don't know how accurate this illustration of Benjamin Franklin is. I have no idea. This is the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin. Beginning life as a printer, from a child I was fond of reading, and all the little money that came into my hands was ever laid out in books. Pleased with the Pilgrim's Progress. My first collection was of John Bunyan's work in separate little volumes. I afterward sold them to enable me to buy R. Burton's historical collections. They were small Chapman's books and cheap, 40 or 50 in all. Plutarch's Lives, there was in which I read abundantly, and I still think that time spent to great advantage. There was also a book of Defoe's called An Essay on Projects, and another of Dr. Mather's called Essays to Do Good, which perhaps gave me a turn of thinking that had an influence on some of the principal future events of my life. The bookish inclination at length determined my father to make me a printer, though he had already one son, James, of that profession. In 1717, my brother James returned from England with a press and letters to set up his business in Boston. I liked it much better than that of my father, but still had a hankering for the sea. To prevent the apprehended effect of such an inclination, my father was impatient to have me bound to my brother. To prevent, he says, Benjamin Franklin says, his brother returned from England with a press and letters to set up his business in Boston. Okay. I liked it much better than that of my father, but still had a hankering for the sea. To prevent the apprehended effect of such an inclination, to prevent him from carrying through with his hankering for the sea and turning it into action, his father was impatient to have him bound to his brother. Now, if I would have said bound when I read the previous newspaper article about Harry who ran away, if I would have said that Harry was bound to his master or bound to the person who owned the plantation, you would have thought something. What you would have thought? What thought would have went in your head when I said bound? I stood out some time, but at last was persuaded and signed the indentures when I was yet but 12 years old. But at last was persuaded, so he was eventually persuaded to be bound to his brother or to work for his brother. He signed the application. He signed the application for employment at 12 years old. I was to serve as an apprentice till I was 21 years of age. He was bound from 12 to 21. Okay? Journeyman's wages during the last year, and became a useful hand. He says, only I was to be allowed journeyman's wages during the last year, and became a useful hand to my brother. And after some time, an ingenious tradesman Mr. Matthew Adams, who had a pretty collection of books and who frequented our printing house, took notice of me, invited me to his library, and very kindly lent me such books as I chose to read. I now took a fancy to poetry and made some little pieces. My father discouraged me by ridiculing my performances and telling me verse makers were generally beggars. So as you can see, a man's father, a boy's father, takes a great deal of responsibility in setting him on a course that the father sees may be beneficial to the boy or to the family name in the future. My father discouraged. Now, this goes across complexion lines. My father discouraged me by ridiculing my performances and telling me verse makers were generally beggars. There was another bookish lad in the town, John Collins by name, with whom I was intimately acquainted. Not sure what he means by intimately. Maybe he just meant he was close to him. You know, his maybe his grasp of the English language is a lot more vast than mine is, to where he, uses different words than I would choose to use. He says, there was another bookish lad in town, John Collins by name, with whom I was intimately acquainted. We sometimes disputed, and very fond we were of argument, and very desirous of confuting one another. One of the pieces in our newspaper on some political point, which I have now forgotten, gave offense to the assembly. He was taken up, censored, and imprisoned for a month by the speaker's warrant, I suppose, because he would not discover his author. I too was taken up and examined before the council, but though I did not give them any satisfaction, they contented themselves with admonishing me and dismissed me, considering me perhaps as an apprentice who was bound to keep his master's secret. Themselves admonishing me. Let's get this language thing together, because so many people get these words twisted and they embellish these words. They romanticize these words. Like he had with his bookish friend, people get an intimate, romantic, even relationship with these words: slave and master, employee, manager, supervisor. Ben says, but though I did not give them any satisfaction, they contented themselves with admonishing me, punishing me, or reprimanding me, and dismissed me, considering me perhaps as an apprentice who was bound to keep his master's secrets. He was bound to his brother, remember? And to keep his master's secrets. Bound, master, being used by Benjamin Franklin, referring to circumstances that he was experiencing. During my brother's confinement, which I resented a great deal, notwithstanding our private differences, I had the management of the paper, and I made bold to give our rulers some rubs in it, which my brother took very kindly, while others began to consider me in an unfavorable light as a young genius that had a turn for libeling and satire. My brother's discharge was accompanied with an order of the House, a very odd one, that James Franklin should no longer print the paper called the New England Current, There was a consultation held in our printing house among his friends when he should do what he should do in this case. Some proposed to evade the order by changing the name of the paper, but my brother, seeing inconveniences in that, it was finally concluded on as a better way to let it be printed for the future under the name of Benjamin Franklin, and to avoid the censure of the assembly that might fall on him as still printing it by his apprentice. The contrivance was that my old indenture should be returned to me, with a full discharge on the back of it, to be shown on occasion, but to secure to him the benefit of my service, I was to sign new indentures for the remainder of the term. So he's still in a business employee and supervisor, manager and employee relationship with his brother, owner and employee, master and slave. He was bound to his brother by this indenture with this application. The contrivance was that my old indenture should be returned to me with a full discharge on the back of it to be shown on occasion. So he was letting him out of that contract. He was giving him back that application, but to secure to him the benefit of my service, I was to sign new indentures for the remainder of the term. I took upon me to assert my freedom for the new remainder of the term, which were to be kept private. A very flimsy scheme it was. However, it was immediately executed, and the paper went on accordingly under my name for several months. So he gave him his original indenture, made him sign another one, used his name to keep his newspaper going so he wouldn't get in trouble. Young Ben couldn't do anything about it. He said, which were to be kept private. A very flimsy scheme it was. His brother scheming on him. At length, or now he's indirectly a part of the scheme that they're doing against the authorities. At length, a fresh difference arising between my brother and me, I took upon me to assert my freedom. Presuming that he would not venture to produce the new indentures. It was not fair in me to take this advantage, and this I therefore reckon one of the first errata of my life, but the unfairness of it weighed little with me. When under the impressions of resentment for the blows his passion too often urged him to bestow upon me. Whoa. So he was putting hands on him. But so he's under indenture. He's bound to his brother. He gave his indenture back. He was made to sign another one, which had him work for him for the remainder of the term. Master and slave. Owner, employee. He was bound to his brother. Also, it was not fair in me to take this advantage, and this I therefore reckon one of the first errata of my life. But the unfairness of it weighed little with me when under the impressions of resentment for the blows his passion too often urged him to bestow upon me. Though he was otherwise not an ill-natured man, he put his hands on him. Perhaps I was too saucy and provoking. So what would you call this today? Let's have a little bit of internet speak. Let's do some internet speak. This victim shaming right here. He said he was too saucy, blaming the victim, right? He put his hands on him and said, and Ben said, maybe I was too saucy and provoking. When he found I would leave him, he took care to prevent my getting employment in any other printing house of the town by going round and speaking to every master. When he found I would leave him, he took care to prevent my getting employment in any other printing house of the town by going round and speaking to every master or owner or boss or manager, supervisor, owner of a business, the master, who accordingly, like the master bedroom you speak in, you sleep in, right? Who accordingly refused to give me work. I then thought of going to New York as the nearest place where there was a printer. So what is he thinking about doing? What is Ben thinking about doing, man? Or what did he do? What is he thinking of doing? And what did he do? I determined on the point, but my father was siding with my brother. I was sensible that if I attempted to go openly, means would be used to prevent me. My friend Collins, therefore, undertook to manage a little for me. He agreed with the captain of a New York sloop for my passage, under the notion of my being a young acquaintance of his. So I sold some of my books to raise a little money, was taken on board privately. And as we had a fair wind, in 3 days I found myself in New York, near 300 miles from home, a boy of but 17. So Benjamin Franklin, what did he do? What was he thinking of? He was thinking of running away, right? Who was he running away from mainly? His brother and his father, right? So what would he be considered? A runaway. The People's Press and Wilmington Advertiser, Wilmington, North Carolina newspaper, Friday, February 19th, 1836. 1836. The People's Press and Wilmington Advisor newspaper, Wilmington, North Carolina, Friday, February 19th, 1836. It says, wanted immediately. Wanted immediately about 40 able-bodied Negro men. Now, we know there's no such thing as a Negro, right? Some made-up stuff. That's your archaeological stuff. That's your bones, your skulls, your skull and bones, your teeth, you know what I mean? Your nose and all that stuff, you know. Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny. No such thing as a Negro. This is an American Indians. Wanted immediately about 40 able-bodied Negro men, about 40 able-bodied American men to be employed as laborers, to be employed as laborers, as workers, to be employed as workers at Fort Caswell on Oak Island. Liberal wages will be given. Apply to Lieutenant Swift at Smithville or to the subscriber at this place, A.J. D. Rosette, Jr. We ain't gonna settle for nothing but all the way. Do the right thing.